The greatest races happen in the greatest places. GT sports car racing is one of the most popular forms of racing on the planet, but it's just a few select venues that become a true spectacle for fans of motorsport. These places, historically speaking, are the older classic circuits unrestrained by modern design limitations. One of those circuits slices through the Belgian forest and retains the straights, speeds, and corners that it's had for decades. This is round 3 of the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship from Spa-Francorchamps. My name is Kyle Heyer, joined by Ryan Marine for today's third round of the 2021 season. Ryan, welcome. This is a racetrack that you and I both know and love, and you're actually headed there next week for the real-life TotalEnergies 24 Hours of Spa, July 31st to August 1st. Ryan, so excited to be back with you here. In the simulated world, I can't wait to watch the real race next week as well.
Oh, that'll be a blast. But before we get to the real race, we've got a blast for us here on the sim racing side of things as well. A perfect venue, so much history, so much tradition, and a real challenge, too, for each of these drivers. I think we're in store for a good show. That's been the case each and every time the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship has come to Spa.
Well, there's a lot of discussions coming into this round. Of course, our point standings in the third round. I was actually not here for the second round of the season, but coming in to round number 3, our standings, Michael Kondaxioglu in the number 96, the McLaren 720S GT3 for Sidemax Motorworks. He currently has 43 points, the most of anybody. Cody Pride, our round 1 winner, sits second. Chris Severt in the number 81 is third, Ryan, as we come into the race here today. But it seems like that 96 car is establishing a pretty stout lead in the points. And given that we've seen him perform well here in the past in last year's championships, I think the 96 is still one to watch.
Yeah, Michael is the defending champion going back to Season 2 of GT World Challenge America Esports and has been strong so far. Runner-up in the first round, a very strong win at Donington the last time out, but he's got some work to do if he's going to win. He qualified just a little while ago in the 10th starting spot. It wasn't much better. In fact, it wasn't better at all for Cody Pride. He'll roll off in 11th position. So we have some different names towards the top. You see Philippe Simard 7th right there in the standings. That's the driver I've got my eye on for this race for several reasons. Number one, he's very, very fast. We saw that in Season 2. We've seen that so far in Season 3 as well. But the BMW M6 GT3 is a rocket ship in a straight line. This Spa track is one that should suit BMW. It is, after all, the most successful manufacturer in the history of the 24 Hours of Spa.
The balance of performance is always a discussion when we talk about GT racing here, Ryan. Of course, just like in the real world, Assetto Corsa Competizione spends a lot of time making sure the cars are balanced in a realistic manner. And of course, in the real world, the goal is to create cars that are the same pace, but they make that pace in different ways. But here at Spa, I find this track a really interesting one to talk about, BOP, because the straights are so long, the corners are so fast. It really shows the strengths and weaknesses of each individual car in a very unique way. This is one of the, there's long straights from La Source all the way to Lake Home. That's over a mile of straightaway plus Eau Rouge and Radion, so you get a lot of straightaway speed here. And then you also have to contend with some high downforce corners as well. So setup BOP will be a lot of discussions today.
No doubt. This track has always been about speed since it was first built back in the 1920s, running at the time along public roads. Basically, it was all high-speed corners with the exception of the La Source hairpin. That part of the track remains intact, and so do many of those high-speed corners. There are some that are a bit slower than what we saw back on the old circuit that ran through the 70s and was ultimately updated to accommodate modern open-wheel cars as well as sports cars. But that said, I think you're right. You do see a bunch of different variations. Different sections of this track are going to favor different cars, different setups even within those cars. I think that's going to be a fascinating thing to keep an eye on.
Let's have a look here at our entry list for the third round of the 2021 GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Right at the top there, Cody Pride for the PPR Esports and the Porsche 911 GT3R. Headlining that, Mia Swenson is back this week with the Intruder Racing team. We've got almost 40 drivers here today, Ryan, and another stout field again. You see Carl Whitmer for HPD here again. So is Cardin Liu, Zach Patterson, as well as, I think, is Josh Staffen here today as well. So a lot of HPD drivers. Of course, they qualified their way into this championship and beat out a whole bunch of other people to be on that team. And there's Josh Staffen, that number 94. So they're going to be in the Acura NSX GT3s, and we'll keep an eye on those drivers. But there's Michael Kondaxioglu for Black Vortex, or excuse me, I missed the
Sidemax Motorworks or Motorsport. Yep.
There's that 96. So as the points leader, I think he's the driver I'm watching because that points lead can go away pretty quickly here at Spa, especially in those fast corners. You make one mistake and it's day over.
Oh, for sure, and there are plenty of treacherous sections of this track, especially starting back where he is. That's not where you want to be as the points leader going in to the first lap of this race. Simon Fisher, you see on this list, another one to keep an eye on. William Hendrickson has been pretty strong as well, enters this race fifth in the point standings. A few new names as well, some we've seen throughout the championship. Others have qualified, and the opportunity to be in these races, it's not a given unless you finish in the top 5 or have a past champions provisional or one of the invitational entries that go to our partners with HPD and the Jazz Academy drivers. The rest of the spots are open for open qualifications based on the manufacturer. So it is cutthroat just to make it. We've seen people who have scored points in one round not even make the field for the second. And so with that in mind, we see the best of the best in these SRO esports races, whether we're talking about the European, American, or Asian championships. And it's led to some extremely good racing with very good grids top to bottom.
You know why I like Spa-Francorchamps, Ryan, is the draft is, as the NASCAR guys call it, the great equalizer around here. Regardless of the car that you've got, regardless of the setup that you're running, getting in the slipstream with the driver in front is going to be that equalizer on that Camel Straight. So we're going to have a look here with Josh Staffin's lap on board. He'll take you around the 19 corners here at Spa.
Hey everyone, Josh Staffen here, driver of the 94 Acura NSX GT3 Evo, and here's a Honda Performance Development Lap at Spa in Belgium. Coming into turn 1, we're looking for the 100 marker on the left side of the track, braking just as it passes out of vision. Drop down to first gear, attack the inside curb as you cut across the apex, and we get on the power as soon as possible for the run down to turn 2. Bring the car to the right side of the track to set the car up for 2, 3, and 4. Keep the throttle pinned as you use the compression to help steer through turns 2 and 3. Before cresting over the hill, using all the available space on the apex of turn 4. Running down the Camel Straight, it's one of the best opportunities to make an overtake around here. We brake just as the curb starts on the left side, dropping down to second gear, cutting across the curbs of both 5 and 6. Keep the car left out of 6 and lift slightly to get back on the power earlier through the apex of turn 7. Down now to the off-camber turn 8, brake at the start of the curb, keeping the car tight through the apex and exit to set the car up for 9. Braking from experience as there's no solid reference point, we hold third gear and cut across the apex curb, counter steering to avoid the TC kicking in and using all of the exit curb. Keep the car to the right side for turns 10 and 11. Wait until you know the car will grip as you gently transition back onto throttle, letting the car drift fully to the right side before bringing it back to the left for the entry to turn 12. Balancing the car on throttle towards the top of the rev range, all the way through the apex of 12, lifting slightly again as we begin entry into 13. Hard on the brakes at the start of the curving, down to second gear. Early on to power, making sure to avoid the apex curb. Keeping the car wide on exit to widen the entry into turn 15 as much as possible. Down the back straight now, setting up another excellent overtaking opportunity, which may have to wait until the exit of turn 17. Here we hold the top of 5th gear, easing the car into the corner, just brushing the apex curb, dropping all the way down to first gear, trail braking all the way to the apex of 18. Quickly switch to half throttle as you turn the car in for the apex of 19, making sure to avoid the anti-cuts, power out to the line, and that completes a lap of Spa in Belgium.
Under 6 kilometers in under 2 minutes and 20 seconds, sailing around Spa. Thanks again for Josh Staffen and HPD for bringing us the HPD Hot Lap. Ryan Marine is joining myself, Kyle Heyer, for the third round of the 2021 GT World Challenge America Esports Championship here from Spa today. We're just a couple minutes away from taking the green flag. Ryan, 60 minutes going up on the board. We've got almost 40 drivers here. We're going to be starting on the run up to Eau Rouge, so there's a lot of discussion that's going to have to happen between the drivers before they crest Radion, and the track's going to narrow down significantly. The start is always very exhilarating, but there's a lot of risk involved as well.
That's right, and again, with many of our championship protagonists a bit further down in the field than we would expect, with the leader Kondacioğlu, Pride, the second-place driver in the standings, starting 10th and 11th. That's a scary place to be when you're filing into one of the more treacherous corners in all of motorsports, really a combination of corners. Eau Rouge at the bottom of the hill and then climbing the hill to Radillon, where you don't want to be side by side if you can help it, but you also don't want to give up any of that valuable track position to your opponent. So it's going to have to be some give and take there for sure, and hopefully we can get this excellent field of GT3 cars and drivers through that opening sequence of corners without too much carnage.
So having a look down the grid, and of course it was Philippe Simard that went quickest. He is sitting on pole in his BMW M6 GT3 with a time of 2 minutes 16.386. That's about a full half second faster than Ryan Meenan, who will start on his outside of the front row. So a half a second gap in qualifying. What's that's going to translate to in the race here, Ryan? He seems like he's got the car to beat.
That's a great question, and I think the rest of the field has to stop and take notice. In GT3 racing, virtual or real, you don't usually see gaps like that, especially in a field this strong. He was extremely fast in the first and third sectors, and that shouldn't come as a huge surprise. A lot of straightaways there. This run from La Source up the hill and then ultimately to Lake Home, if you can do it flat, it's something like 1.3 miles of full throttle running and duration. And then if you think about Sector 3, that's the run through Blanchimont into La Source. That's a nice, long, full throttle section, too, if you got the car handling just right. And that BMW M6, it is known for being extremely fast in a straight line. So those two parts of this track should favor that car. The middle sector, though, went to the McLaren of our points leader, Michael Kondacioğlu, who starts back in 10th, had the fastest middle sector. So, again, that's the give and take you talked about there, Kyle. And clearly, it's not just the BMW, because it's just the one BMW starting inside the top 23, as you see right there. So Philippe is doing some things excellent behind the wheel, too. The setup must be very, very good, but that's one lap pace. We're about to see what he can do over the course of 1 hour.
Of course, the race is going to be far more than just the opening lap, so he's going to have a lot of work to do. The next BMW is 29th placed Caleb Lavender, followed by Eric Armillo behind him in 30th. So there's 3 BMWs, make that 4. Of course, there's also Brian Mandeville back in 40th. There's 4 BMWs, but only one in the top 23, so obviously Simard is doing something right. You alluded to the points leader starting in 10th. Why is that a big deal? The top 10 get points here, Ryan. Cody Pride is already out of the points starting in 11th, so that's a pretty big risk to be starting back there, because if you can't move forward, if your qualifying pace is indicative of your race pace, you're going to lose a lot of points heading in round 4.
A lot of points, and again, there's not a guarantee that you make it to the next round. If you finish outside of the top 5, you've got to qualify for next month's competition. Kondacioğlu is the exception to that as the reigning series champion. He's got that past champions provisional, to use stock car racing parlance. But that said, you want to be up in the points for sure. You want to position yourself, if you're Pride, to be in a spot to be able to know that you're going to be racing next month and not have to earn your way into the field. So there's a lot at stake, and it's not just about the championship. It's not just about winning races. It's about positioning yourself today so that you don't have to sweat it out next month to make sure that you're still in the hunt.
So with 13 seconds left before we begin our pace lap, the drivers will have one full lap to warm up their tires and brakes before the run down the Kemmel Straight into Lake Home for the first time. A lot of shuffling and passing always happens on opening lap, but Ryan, as they always say, almost like beating a dead horse at this point, you cannot win a race on lap 1, but you certainly can lose it. And so there's a lot of drivers, I think, towards the rear that are going to try to take advantage of a lot of the checking and stacking up that's going to happen at the top of Radillon and try to get a run into Lake Home. So I think if you're a spectator along the virtual guardrail right now, I think you're watching down in Lake Home to see if there's any dramas in the opening lap. But hopefully everyone keeps the fenders off of each other. We have a nice clean run through the first couple corners.
Yeah, those virtual spectators, hopefully they've got their virtual Belgian beer and their virtual frites and mayonnaise, because they're going to be in for a show. I think you're exactly right. This is a really cool place to watch. If you've ever been to Spa, you know what I'm talking about. When I was there in 2019, I had some time to go explore And even though it was raining, there was no stopping me. I was going to be walking around, taking in all the sights that I could. And this shot right here is one of the spots you can kind of get to this point. Now, maybe not quite this close, but you can get at this same basic vantage point down the hill. And as good as Assetto Corsa Competizione is in replicating the experience of being at some of these great tracks, it must be said, there's nothing quite like seeing that climb in person. I'm not sure there's any way to fully replicate that much elevation change. It is huge. So that's part of the huge challenge of Spa. You've got so much elevation change. You've got the high speeds. It's just one of the fantastic circuits in the world. There's a reason it is so revered.
It certainly is, and speaking of things that Assetto Corsa Competizione simulates very, very well, let's talk about the soundscape. If anybody watching has had experience in Assetto Corsa Competizione, you'll know what I'm talking about. When you're at a racetrack in the real world, there's reverberations and echoes, and the ground thunders and vibrates. Sitting here alongside the virtual Spa-Francorchamps, you feel that. The soundscape of this simulator is absolutely spectacular, really puts you in this place, in the moment. I love listening to ACC, and I just cannot wait to get these cars thundering and rumbling off into the Belgian forest here in ACC. Had a look at Kondaxioglu, and great shots to have the cameras on the drivers as well. That's a really cool feature. There's Killian Ryan Meenan in the number 2 FFS racing car, the Aston Martin Vantage GT3. Cool looking tail lights kind of sweeping up over the tailgate of that car. They'll be doubling up before the run down to Eau Rouge, Ryan, and there is Killian Ryan Meenan, a great looking simulator there. Another thing I love about ACC and simulators in general is drivers get really into building their setup, and very much like teams customize the insides of cars to make them more comfortable for the drivers. These guys here put a lot of time, effort, and energy into customizing their setups with Vanatech gear to be as perfect as possible so that they can get the maximum amount of speed.
No question, being comfortable makes such a big difference. I think maybe even more in sim racing than in real racing. There's a nice wave from Killian. Great to have you back in the field, by the way. Killian not with us at Donington after scoring a point in the opening round of the championship at Kyalami. So coming back and doing so in a big way, starting in second. But man, it was so tight, Kyle, in qualifying. Second, third, fourth, fifth. Really, most of the top 10, except for Simard, was separated by just a couple tenths of a second, so expect it to be very, very strong. This is a look at Cody Pride, second place in points, had a great comeback drive last month in that race at Donington to ultimately get up to 6th, was running much higher than that and had a bit of a setback that put him back in the order, put him on the back foot, and he was able to come back through the field. Pairing that with a victory in the opening round at Kyalami, this will be a driver to keep an eye on, no question.
Well, we know he has the pace to win the race, but he's got to pass 10 other drivers to get there first. Heading through Blanchimont now, one of the fast left-handers towards the end of the lap. That is, one of my favorite places on this course, Ryan, is the run through Blanchimont that we're about to do here in a minute. It is one of those corners that you balance the car on the edge of control. And as it's just spectacular to watch these GT3 cars. Again, with lower downforce setups, it's going to be a little bit scary. With the higher downforce setups, you'll feel pretty planted there. But I think everyone's going to be a little bit worried for this opening lap as we get prepared to take the green flag for round 3. One more corner, Ryan, we're going to turn them loose.
Well, the butterflies are going, not just for these drivers, but for me as well. Can't wait to see what we have in store. Might we have a new winner? We haven't had a repeat winner in some time, Kyle. We went the whole of Season 2 without a repeat winner in sprint competition. We're 2 for 2 with different winners thus far to start this 3rd season. Let's see if that trend holds.
Double wide over 20 rows deep. Round 3 of the 2021 GT World Challenge America Esports Championship is here at Spa. 1 hour on the board up front. Philippe Simard and Killian Ryan Meenan are going to lead the field to the green. As soon as they get to the flag stand, they're going to turn loose hundreds of horsepower from their GT racing machines in Assetto Corsa Competizione under the TotalEnergies bridge under the gantry. Green flag flies, and we're racing at Spa.
Great alignment from this field, but that's where it gets hairy. Good there for the front row to get themselves sorted, but it is 2 and 3 wide further back. Looks like everybody's been able to make it up the hill without any contact, at least so far. Let's hope that continues to hold true down the Kemmel Straight into Les Combes.
So far, so good. Into Les Combes. There's a pass. There's the Lexus, the number 731, off to driver's right. A little bit of 3 wide, double wide now as they head into the right-hander. Some chicanes here. Climb up on the curbs. very neat and tidy so far. One car a little bit cheeky on the inside edge of the curbs. You do not want to get caught with track limits penalties, Ryan. That's one thing we didn't mention is how easy it is to run wide here and get yourself or catch the ire of the virtual officials as well.
So much old school about this track. That is one exception to it. The track limits certainly have crept in with some of the safety infrastructure put into place here at Spa in recent years. I think the stewards, though, will look at that with a light touch, I would say, on the opening lap, especially going side by side. If there's not a huge advantage gained, I think the decision to run a little bit wide might be the prudent one, just to make sure everybody can get through this first lap and continue the race.
On board now with Cody Pride, and you can see the stack up forming ahead of him. That's Fritz right off the nose in the Bentley. That was very dicey as they head off into the braking zone. A lot of accordion effect, as I call it, when one driver jumps on the brakes a hair earlier than the other, and it just continues to stack up, and then you're running into the back of each other. So always leave yourself an out when it's this close. You have a place to dive out of the way, but so far so good. I don't think we've had a single car contact, Ryan. Well behaved, but will it last for 58.5 minutes? That's the real question.
I think the answer will be no, unfortunately. As good as these drivers are, they're going to be pushing the limit. I think that's too much to ask for, but that said, what a great start from these two here with the front. The front row got it sorted out nice and quick. Philippe Simard, though, has not been able to escape Killian Ryan Mean, and he stayed right there in his tire tracks using that slipstream, that equalizer you talked about, to stay close. This is a little bit further back. We've got Aston, Nicholas Alvarado there trying to fend off some challengers and stacking up. Oh, there's a spin for you right in the back of that picture. I did see somebody around, so it does happen, but it was a pretty clean opening lap, all things considered.
Alvarado again in that kind of pink and black camo Aston. There's Cody Pride. Is still in 11th spot. Not a lot of shuffling up at the front so far. Simard, Ryan Meenan, Sievert, and even all the top five essentially are where they started, which tells me that their qualifying pace is essentially what their race pace at least was for one lap. Now, with full speed heading up onto the Kemmel Straight, they're going to have an opportunity to use that slipstream to make a pass. Here's William Hendrickson in the Mercedes going by, I think that's Carden Liu in the Acura NSX GT3 in the number 25. They're door-to-door off into Lake Home.
Yeah, I don't think Lou's ready to give that position up. Late on the brakes and sweeps across the nose of Hendrickson's Mercedes. So Carden Liu able to hold on to that 7th position for now, and that puts Hendrickson on the back foot. Here comes the points leader, Michael Kadacioglu, up a couple of spots from the start. Make that up 1 spot from the start, and looking to grab one more from Hendrickson if he can.
The competition level in the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship is so high that making passes is incredibly difficult. Finding any differential in speed is going to be a challenge. Even with the slipstream, even with the driver in front of you making a very rare mistake, you're still going to have to be opportunistic and maybe be a little optimistic at times to get passes done. And it's going to take moves like we saw Carden Liu do, where you just stomp on the brakes a little bit deeper, a little bit later, and just hope the Pirelli tires have the grip to take it. It's just going to be out-driving each other, Ryan. There's not going to be a lot of cheeky over-unders and that sort of thing. These drivers are too good to make mistakes like that.
Looks like it was Caleb Lavender who went around and has dropped out of this race, unfortunately. Finished 21st in his first start, 24th in the second start so far this season. That's one of the BMWs that we thought could be strong in this race. They are down 1 bullet from their chamber at this point as Kadacioglu here continues to heap on the pressure, and he's got Fritz running right behind in that big old Bentley on McLaren. Only in GT3 racing can you say that. Now it's McLaren trying to attack the Mercedes. Bentley around the outside into the bus stop. Wow, that was close.
The bus stop here is so tight and the radius is so short and so small that you kind of fold the cars over on top of themselves. They get air if you get up on top of the sausage curb. So a very tight corner, and then some of the bigger, longer wheelbase cars have a little bit of trouble making that rotation. But Kadacioglu, again, defending pretty well from the Porsche, but Fritz in that Bentley still on the attack of the two in front. Hendrickson in the Mercedes doing well to hang on to that spot, but climbing up the hill again through Eau Rouge and Radillon. 5 minutes in, and the front five make that, have still stayed where they are, but there's a little bit more dramas heading off in the back of the top 10.
Well, my read on that was the championship leader saying discretion is the better part of valor, backing out of that, not putting up too much of a fight. It's easy for that to go wrong there in that chicane that leads on to the new pit straight, if you will, in this reconfigured Spa circuit. Here is Riley Murdoch, one of the newcomers, trying to make to hold on to this position, it appears, in that Ferrari. Quite a bit of pressure behind it. That's the stack up you were talking about. the car at the front of the field has the actions there of implications 4, 5, 6 cars down the running order.
That's Medora on the inside in the Lexus. Simon Fisher is in the McLaren. They're door-to-door now. That's very tight. Maybe a touch there on the left front of the Lexus. Runs out wide onto the turf. Here comes the Lamborghini. That's Canapan, I believe, who's coming up from the back in 21st. Great battle back here at the bottom half of the top 20. Simon Fisher in the McLaren, though, clear of the battle for now. Behind him, it's Canapan. Woodrow, I think, is also in the mix in another Lamborghini. All sorts of battles happen at the bottom half of the top 20.
Yeah, there's fights up and down this field, and that's how good this field is too. You're always going to have somebody to fight with, it seems like. And there are plenty of drivers sitting back here. Wow, if I just had done something just a little bit different in qualifying, I could have been up in the top 10. That everybody in the field feels that way, and now they're fighting to prove it. This, though, has major implications. Kondacioğlu right now out of the points as they run, as Pride has been able to make his way past. Can Kondacioğlu retaliate there through Blanchimont, that high-speed left-hander, taking a peek to the outside here in the bus stop.
Around the outside, couldn't quite get overlap the two in front of them, Fritz and Hendrickson. They were door-to-door as well. Spin! Around goes the Mercedes. Hendrickson slides out of the final corner, and Pride and Kondacioğlu both go through, but the Bentley and the Mercedes tangle there, Ryan. Local caution in that final corner, and there's Riley Murdoch off as well.
I would have loved that onboard, or I guess not onboard, but that shot of Michael driving in that moment when he saw that spin, just as everybody was bunched up right in front of him. His life had to flash before his eyes there. That is big, since that was Hendrickson who came into this 5th in points. He was driving his heart out, trying to keep the championship leaders behind him to try and make some ground up in the points. Unfortunately, it goes awry for him, but still very early, and as we saw last month, you can recover from a little mishap. We'll see if he's able to do so with the amount of time left. Keep in mind, we do still have a pit stop in this race, the mandatory pit stop window just around the halfway mark, 5 minutes on either side, and there is some strategy that comes into play there that might be able to elevate some of these cars a bit further down the order back into the fight. That's Hendrickson going wide again.
Yeah, cutting through Lake Home. I think he just sort of missed the corner and just decided to cut it and not stay on track alongside and create a problem. But he's dropped all the way down to 20th now, and now it's going to be an uphill climb. The good news, Ryan, is that the final corner, that chicane, that bus stop as they call it, is so slow that even if you get hit there, the damage is likely to be pretty minimal. And from the looks of it, that car is still in pretty good shape. While he's lost some track position and some time, I think he'll be quick enough to probably claw at least a few of these spots back.
That's true. Damage, though, here at Spa, I think, is probably more harmful than just about anywhere else that we're going to go because of those long straightaways. Any extra drag you take, especially if you're out in front leading one of these packs, it just makes you a sitting duck. You might as well have an anchor out behind you. Even a little bit of damage on these GT3 cars, which are carefully tuned to be as aero-friendly as possible given the road car confines that the manufacturers are working with. It's definitely costly at a place like this if some of that bodywork gets ruffled a bit.
Look at Kondacioğlu now in the number 96 looking. Drivers left again on Cody. Pride into the braking zone for the bus stop. Going to try to over-under here on the exit. Gets a wider line into later apex. That McLaren's turbocharged V8 powering down at corner exit. But not enough of a run to get to him by La Source. But this is essentially the points lead battle, given that these drivers are now scoring in the points. They're still going to lose some ground to the other drivers that are in front of them, but the battle between themselves is getting pretty toasty here, Ryan. 10 minutes into this race, and they've got a long way to go, but I don't think any of them is going to wait around for anybody else.
No, I don't think so. Pride has been really, really strong in his defense. Here's a replay going back a little while. Let's see if we can pick up anything of note here. There's an accordion effect. Yikes.
That's a big crash down there in turn number 1. A couple Audis collected, BMW as well. But that was down in La Source. And Ryan, the track pretty much turns back on itself. It's almost an 180-degree corner, so it's really easy to just outbrake yourself just the slightest little bit and get into somebody's door.
Yeah, all the way down to first gear there, slowest part of this track. It's been that way since the very beginning. One of the cool parts of Spa is the long history, and so much of it that's even now it's a permanent circuit, but many of these corners were part of the public road system back in the 1920s when this first was conceived as a racing circuit, and La Source has been a fixture ever since the very early days.
But continuing to watch the battle for 8th position, significant because it's the two front runners in the points for the season. As here's a look at another incident down here in Eau Rouge. And this is two BMWs, I think, going. Oh, big bobble there by the BMW. Oh, slams the tire bundles at the exit of Radion. And Ryan, that's the worst feeling, even in the simulator, to have the grip go at the center of Eau Rouge, climbing the hill in the full compression. That's a scary moment.
No question, that is a high commitment part of the track if you're doing it right at one of these GT3 cars, depending on fuel load and what you decide to do from a downforce perspective, and also track conditions have an effect here, but there are ways of doing it flat out, and you're counting on the grip being there, and when it breaks away from you like that, it's hard to do much about it as Kondacoglu continues to heap the pressure onto that Porsche. Pride, though, very strong as you would expect that rear-engine Porsche to be out of the bus stop. The weight over the drive wheels with the engine in the back of that 911 really gives a nice run out of some of the slow corners. There's not a lot of those here at Spa, bus stop, and this one right here, but that's about it. And those, crucially, are ones that lead to opportunities to pass, and he's been able to get out of those corners well, build enough of a gap over Kondacoglu that he's been able to hold on to that position at least so far.
You can see down by race control at the bottom of your screen, incident on lap 1 involving cars 412 and 833. 15-second penalty to car 412 for avoidable contact. Ryan, that's the worst way to win a race is to get yourself penalties. The reason why, because you're not going to win a race with getting yourself penalties, not in a championship like this. If you don't have a clean race, you're probably not going to be anywhere near first place. You got to be fast and also pretty much perfect, and that's a lot to ask of a lot of people. Looking at the battle for 4th here, Langevin in the number 69, chasing Sievert in the 81. As they head on down to the double left-hander. High-speed double left here. Ryan, very easy to track out a little bit too wide, get your tires up on the AstroTurf. But these drivers are fighting for a podium spot, so the trade-off is high here. You can get a bunch of points.
Well, only one start so far this season for Langevin. That was in the last round at Donington, where he finished 36th, so it's going much better here. Sievert, we haven't talked much about yet, Kyle, but this is actually your 3rd-place driver in the point standings. He was the runner-up the last time out. 5th place at Kyle Lamy, sitting quite a ways behind in terms of points. 15 behind Kondacoglu and 5 behind Pride. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but first this replay here, Kyle.
Having a look at the Bentley chasing the Mercedes. We've seen this a handful of times. Is this the same two once again, or is this... No, this is from before. This is the incident that we were watching earlier as Mercedes got turned around, and he just checks up and just front to rear contact and stacked everybody up. I'm shocked that there wasn't more contact, although you see the Aston and the black and white McLaren also get a piece of it.
And again, that was Hendrickson, 5th place in points. We got some spins behind. I think people were checking up, seeing that there was an incident out in front through the windshield. But when you're in these big clumps of cars, if you're 2nd, 3rd, 4th in line, you really can't see what's coming. You can look at some of the tools available to you to know that maybe there is a stopped car coming up ahead. But that said, when those in front are checking up in an unexpected place, that's when you see some of those incidents like we saw there that weren't directly related to that first spin when Hendrickson got sent around, but everything that happened after that was just the reaction to having a stranded car. Somebody's trying to make it side by side.
No,
yikes.
That is not going to work. And a cut through Radion for the McLaren. I think that's Gobi. That was a scary moment, having a little bit of contact right at the top of the hill. And as you come up over that crest, Ryan, all the wheels are going to get a little bit lighter as the weight shifts off the car as you come over the top of that crest, and the car becomes a little bit less controllable. So if you sidestep, it can be a very sketchy moment. Here's Carl Whitmer also going around the outside. He's going to grab 2 for 1, maybe, way out onto the AstroTurf in the Acura, and he's going to grab 2, I think.
Wow, here comes Whitmer trying to make it work around the outside. Had to miss the last round because of some real-world racing commitments. Back here in this NSX in the esports context and giving it a really good ride. Right now in 13th spot. That was some awesome fighting between some great sim racing drivers side by side, door to door, through some of the more treacherous corners around this circuit.
He's got some exciting things coming up on his real racing schedule as well. But we've seen Carl racing here in the Esports series in the past and has found some success. But right now is in the middle of an incredible battle for position, all happening for 10th. Alvarado is the front car. That's that pink, purple, and black Aston Martin, followed by Gobi, Fritz, and then of course Whitmer. And then there's well, actually Fritz is in the Bentley just behind there. You see the timing updates. Then it's Walker and Lehman right behind. That's a 5 or 6 car battle, all for 10th place here, Ryan.
Yeah, Matt Lehman, 7th in points, had a great run in both of the first 2 races, finishing in the top 10, 6th and 7th, but he's got some work to do if he's going to score points here. This battle continues to rage between Pride and Kadacioglu, and I think Michael's got to be getting frustrated because it seems like he's got the pace just about everywhere except for out of the bus stop and out of Les Sources. That's where that Porsche is so strong, and this is a good passing opportunity here, and certainly the run through Rouge Radion and up down the Kimmel into Lake Home is another good opportunity, but that Porsche too strong out of the slow speed stuff, at least so far, for the McLaren to be able to get the run he needs.
There's Ryan Walker in the 887 McLaren having a look at the back of a similarly styled number 67. That is Lehman right in front of him, chasing him through Eau Rouge and Radion. One of the things that's simulated here in Assetto Corsa Competizione is the aerodynamics of these cars. Pretty sensitive to following directly in the wake of another driver. The slipstream will help you as here comes Kadacioglu on the inside, almost a touch between himself and Pride. They're going to run wide through Lake Home, and now side by side, Kadacioglu is through, and he picks up 8th place away from the driver that's second in the standings.
Now we'll see if Pride can come back here through Rivage or Bruxelles. This corner has a couple of names, as do so many around this great circuit, into Jackie Ick's corner here. Left-hander sweeping down the hill, sets you up for the run down to Pouhon. One of the most difficult corners, I think, on this track. It requires so much patience here. You turn in, you let the car drift wide, but you can't go too wide or else you'll exceed those track limits. Back to power as quick as you can for the run here into Fania. Really good stuff, though, between those two. Great battle. I think it was inevitable, though. Michael was the quicker of the two. We got a big spin.
Well, I was just about to mention that the 133 car, who just went for the loop, that's Fritz. Well, he has to serve a penalty for the contact with the Mercedes of Hendrickson earlier in the race. So that was salt in the wound on top of that. So the loop and now a trip down pit lane to serve that penalty.
That's disappointing for the Bentley driver. Fritz is going to have to make that trip down pit lane, and then in about 5-6 minutes time we'll see that pit window open up and he'll have to make another pit stop and another run through the pits, and there's drive-through penalties and there's drive-through penalties, Kyle. It sounds the same no matter what track you go to, but here, because of this endurance pit lane format, which uses the new F1 pits as well as the old on this here on the exit of Les Sources to the right for the drivers, it is a massive pit lane. It takes forever on the pit speed limiter to get down through there. A drive-through at this place, more than just about any other, is crippling to your chances.
Well, that's why I'm also keeping an eye on Pride and Kadacioglu when they come down to pit lane. It's an opportunity with how much you charge that entry and how quickly you can get out the exit road. Leaving the pit lane, you could gain or lose a significant amount of time there. So if you're locked in a very intense battle with another driver only a tenth or two apart, you can leapfrog them with an attack strategy, either leaving or entering pit lane. What you don't want to do is go so hard that you end up crashing. Woodrow, speaking of going so hard he almost crashed at the top of Radion, he had that car bouncing all sorts of sideways.
It's been a nice solid run, although Woodrow's going to have an additional 15 seconds tacked on to his pit stop. That's a penalty accrued earlier, unfortunately. That's going to be hard to overcome and still crack the top 10 and score points, but showing some good pace in the Lamborghini. It is the best placed Lamborghini at the moment, all the way back in 15th. That is somewhat surprising. That car has been so strong in GT3 competition. The Evo version of the Huracan has been excellent. Looking for a breakthrough win in the real TotalEnergies 24 Hours of Spa coming up next week. It's a somewhat diminished pro driver lineup for Lamborghini this year, but nevertheless, I think they'll be one to beat. If there's going to be a manufacturer that can upset the apple cart and contend with the German manufacturers, Audi and Porsche and BMW, I think Lamborghini's the one to keep an eye on.
well, it certainly would win or at least be highly placed in a sound competition. That V10, naturally aspirated V10, certainly screams a beautiful note for all fans of motorsport. One of the best sounding cars out there, I think. Maybe the Aston Martin or the Porsche could contend with that, with the screaming flat six that's been around for a little while. But here's Lehman and Walker and Woodrow all right now battling for 13th place, right behind Alvarado, who dropped out of 10th spot a little while ago. Carl Whitmer in up to 11th, I should say. He started a little bit deeper in the field, if I recall. It wasn't that far back. Well, I guess it was 20th. Well, 9. That's a great climb for Whitmer.
It has been really, really strong. Here's a big move up the inside there from the second of those McLarens, the 887. That is Walker trying to work around the 67 car of Lehman. Watching him at work, and that brings the Lamborghini into the fight. Woodrow, watch them scrap it out just ahead and certainly compromise the exit of the bus stop there. And so here we go. Walker trying to make the outside work, and I think he did. It'll be advantage Walker when they make this left-handed run down to Eau Rouge, and I suspect we will see the Lamborghini back out of it a little bit, and indeed that has been the case. So Woodrow drops back, Walker up a spot. Now he runs off, trying to run down Lehman here before too much longer, as the pit window looms in about 3.5 minutes.
With that pit window coming up, as I mentioned, drivers are going to be trying to search for every little bit of speed that they can on entry and exit, but also, the opportunity of when to pit. If you're in a pack of cars, Ryan, you've got people in front of you that are slowing you down, even if you don't think they're slowing you down. If you've got cars out your windshield within breathing distance, I think you should hit pit lane early. If you've got nobody in front of you, you've just got clear track all to yourself, you could stay out a little bit longer, but don't hinder yourself when you don't have to. Just also make sure that if you don't have any traffic in your way and you come to pit lane, make sure you're not going to pop right back out into traffic. You got to be the judge and executioner here, both the crew chief, the car chief, and the driver, to be good here today.
Well, that is the challenge. I think you highlighted it there. It's easy to make the call, okay, I'm mired in traffic, let's come to the pit lane now. What is less clear, especially from the cockpit, is where does that leave me when I pop back out? Am I going to enter into just as much traffic as I was trying to escape before, or is there clean track? Because if you could find yourself that clean track, you can run your fast laps unencumbered. That gives you the chance to do the undercut strategy to try and overtake a driver in the pits. So I expect we'll see some attempt that. It's easier to do if you know where you're going to come out on the track relative to the competition, but and so many of these professional teams these days have software that can predict that kind of thing. I'm not sure what's available to these drivers in real time.
Here comes Lehman with a big run to the outside of Alvarado into the braking zone for the bus stop. Going to try to go the long way around both these cars with purple color. One's an Aston, one's a McLaren. Two different representations of the United Kingdom sports car offerings. And very different in the approach to going fast, but still very capable racing machines. And now Woodrow right back into the mix. And this has got to be perhaps a little bit frustrating, Ryan, for Lehman and for Walker, who are battling a driver that they know is not going to be a factor once they hit pit lane. He's still racing. He still has a right to race, but they know that he's not going to be there. He's just going to slow them down right now.
Yeah, that is tough. I'm not sure there's an easy fix to that. I think you just got to deal with it, basically. Put your head down and let your driving take care of it. Just up ahead of these guys, though, well, actually, I'll get to that story in a second. This is a nice challenge for position. That Lamborghini looking awfully strong here, taking a peek to the outside.
Yeah, in the full slipstream of the Aston Martin ahead as well. So that is going to be of assistance, and he will clear the McLaren and drop himself in front of Lehman in the number 67 McLaren. And this battle has been raging for about 15 minutes. They have not really separated from each other. Meanwhile, we haven't shown you out front in a little while. That's okay. You haven't missed much. Philippe Samard continues to lead by over 4 seconds over Killian Ryan Meenan. So the battle right now continues to be for 12th on back. There is Philippe Samard out front and having a good time. Some lap traffic to contend with, Ryan, but a nice Saturday afternoon drive through the fours here in Belgium.
Yeah, we talked about him a little bit off air. Our recollection is, going back to Season 2, that he was frequently the bridesmaid, but never quite got the top step of the podium. Always fast, qualified well in these sprint races specifically, but couldn't get that crucial win in pursuit of the championship. And so when he stuck the car on pole, that did not come as a surprise. My recollection was he was kind of an ace in qualifying in Season 2, and that's carrying over a little bit. That BMW very fast at this track, fast driver behind the wheel. It seemed like a good combination, and that's the way it's played out so far.
The pit window is now open here at 35 minutes remaining, so drivers can come down and serve their mandatory pit stop. Once they come to pit lane, they're good to go to the rest of the race. You'll see that orange box that's next to their name. That will turn green, and then they'll be good to go to the end of the race. Here is Woodrow on a run on Alvarado. Alvarado defends nicely. You're allowed a move, not in reaction to the trailing car, Ryan. He did that perfectly within the bounds of the rules, and he will remain out front.
He did, but I think you brought up a good point, especially now that the pit window is open. Knowing that the driver you're racing against is going to have to serve a 15-second additional time penalty in the pits the next time, I'm not sure that fighting that hard is that great of an idea. You're going to get the spot back when the pit sequence shuffles through anyway. Why take the risk? I get it. You want to keep them behind. You know that's a fast car that you might have to contend with again if you do let them by as Woodrow comes back through the field, potentially recovering from that penalty. But that said, that was a pretty close call into the bus stop, and we're about to have another one, I think, into Lake Home.
Here comes Woodrow up the outside in the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo, the long way around. He's going to get the track back left for him here shortly. Gets pinched off, 4 tires up on top of the curbs. Still unable to get by Alvarado. That's going to bring Lehman right back into the mix here for the battle for 12th, and they've lost a bunch of time to Carl Whitmer. He is now about 2.5 seconds up the road from this battle. So while they continue to race for 12th pretty hard, they're also bringing in some other drivers into the mix. Here's a look back at Fisher in 23rd spot. He's got a little ways to go, chasing down Gonzalez in the Ferrari.
This is a bit surprising. Simon Fisher, one of the names that's familiar to this championship, currently 8th in points, had an 11th place finish just outside of the points in the opener, but was 4th at Donington Park, and I thought might be one that could contend, but it's not gone his way so far. I'd like to call the attention, though, to the driver in 10th, and that is Alou Gobi in one of the other McLarens. This is the story I was trying to tell earlier, but we had a bunch of action, so I had to break away from it. This is the debut for Alou Gobi, and you might notice we've not talked yet about Honor Rose, who was last year's GT4 champion and has figured prominently in each of the first 2 races, even though the results haven't necessarily been there. She is extremely fast, but not in the field this weekend. Has been running the McLaren through the first 2 rounds. Not in the field this time. That opens the door here for Gobi to participate, and I'd say Gobi has taken this opportunity with open arms and really made the most of it, running very strong inside the points on debut.
Love the Grip Hacks Engineering team name as well. That's sort of a classic sim racing joke. But Gobi right now running in 10th. Here's some more penalties from race control. Racing incident for the incident on lap number 3, that 4 or 5 car crash. Incident on lap number 6 involving the car number 52, unsafe rejoin. That was just a warning. An incident on lap number 8 involving cars 67 and 133, drive-through penalty to car 67 for avoidable contact. Now you'll recall that the 133 car had a penalty earlier. Well, he was on the receiving end of some contact, so now the car that was the offender for that has also gotten a penalty. So the stewards have been busy today, Ryan. A couple drivers getting some contact penalties and having to serve time on the pit lane. Not where you want to be halfway through a race.
No, Alvarado also not really where he wants to be. He's on the back foot, no question about that. Dropping a couple of spots here. Whitmer got by a little while ago. Now under attack here from Lehman just outside of the points as they run, with Cloutier right behind also in the Lexus, looking at this and thinking, well, this could be interesting. There could be an opportunity here. I should also note that I think the first real roll of the dice from a strategy perspective has played out. We saw Staffen pit from inside the top 10 in one of the NSX entries, and that's the first top 10 runner, I think, to make a pit call so far. So we'll see if the undercut is in play here. Everybody else running long. Staffen has found himself some clear track. We know that's a fast driver car combination. There might be a chance to leapfrog a couple competitors if this plays out the way I think it's going to.
I think in this case, the undercut is more of a strategy called to get yourself out of traffic. These Pirelli tires are pretty good at double stinting at a track like Spa, so I don't think it'll be a ton of time gained just from changing any sort of tire change or that sort of deal. But Alvarado in the 420 car, again, trying to run away from 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th as they stack up behind. With that pit window open, you only have a couple more laps of opportunity to do it. If I'm Alvarado, I would have already hit pit lane. I feel like you're sort of delaying the inevitable here, and the more defending you're doing, the slower you're going.
Yeah, it's a tough call. I mean, and it's hard to think strategy. Here is the call to pit lane, actually, right on cue. I think it is hard to call strategy, though, when you're in this position. You got your hands full just trying to play defense, and trying to think proactively is a real challenge.
See a local caution in the final corner. That probably just for cars slowing to go to pit lane. I don't think there was any loop or anything of the sort. Out front, again, it's been Philippe Samard since the drop of the green flag. You haven't missed a lot out there. There's Alexis Moissan in the EGT Motorsport Audi, and we haven't really talked about the Audi R8 GT3 LMS car a whole lot yet today, but there are a handful of them out there, and Moissan right now the highest running of them. Similar in the underpinnings to the Lamborghini Huracan, Ryan, but fundamentally different cars in terms of some of their characteristics, and they have a little bit of a different sound tone as well to tell them apart.
Definitely true. Let's take another look at a replay here. This is an interesting situation always when you're side by side there. Those front two battling it out, and brings another car in, and I think just had to check up there at the crest of the hill. Easy to lose the back end in a situation like that as the weight transfers forward when you have to go to the brakes or let off the gas, especially when the car is in yaw or cresting a hill when you've got so much of the vehicle dynamics in play at that time. So yeah, it's unfortunate that spin happened, but didn't look like the contact with the wall was too hard. And did want to clean up one thing. I was alerted to the fact that Elu Gobi actually was in the first round at Kyalami. My apologies there. Finished 14th in that race. So yep, I got ahead of myself, but nevertheless, it's been a good run here.
I didn't know enough to correct you, but Gobi sounded familiar enough that I could have sworn that they were there. But 27 minutes to go. The pit window is closing in just under 3 minutes. Here's Kilian Ryan Meenen pitting from second. And Philippe Samard, you can see him just up the road. I'm curious to see if there was any gain here. But Ryan, their race pace has sort of been established at this point, and I would be really surprised if Ryan Meenen was able to find pace to run Samard back down. I would never say never, but it seems like Samard has the field covered today.
Yes, I would agree with that assessment. However, I think in the final half of the race, we'll start to see some lap traffic come into play. That definitely can throw a spanner into the works. I hate to bring it up, but frankly, we've seen some bad luck hit Samard in situations like this in the past. So that's probably in the back of Philippe's mind as well as we take another look at a replay.
I think this is where the penalty from the number 67 came from. And this is where we saw this car get turned around right before the 133 served his penalty. And right there you see the contact from the 67. So thanks to the guys behind the scenes being on top of that and pulling that so we could take a look at it. We saw that car spin. We just didn't know how it happened. Now we know it was the 67 car of Lehman that triggered that collision. I think Lehman has already served. Maybe he hasn't. He's still showing one pit stop required to come hit pit lane. There is Josh Staffen in the number 94. He did our HPD lap guide for us that you saw at the beginning of the broadcast. We haven't really seen or talked a lot about Josh today, surprisingly. He was running well, made his pit stop. He was the first of the drivers to make his pit stop, but just been quietly kind of lurking, Ryan. And I'm curious to see if he'll be a bigger force at the end of this.
Yeah, me too. And I'm curious to see how the strategy plays out. It seems like it should, if he's able to put those laps together post-pit stop, be able to jump up the order a little bit. It's very curious indeed in terms of how this is going to play out here with Staffen. We've seen a lot of the front runners pit here in the last couple of laps. So yeah, we'll keep a close eye on how the timing and scoring shake out. It looks like, is that Carden Liu just up ahead? Is that the team car?
It might be. There's a handful of them out there. I think that's Carden Liu in the, yes. Indeed it is, the sixth place, number 25. I also, as we watch this battle for P6, keeping an eye on Pride and Condaxioglu as they battle for 8th and 9th. They've been sort of stuck at the bottom half of the top 10, but Ryan, they're leading the points. Doesn't that just show how competitive this series is in this season, that our 2 points leaders are mired back as far as 8th and 9th? I mean, that's not a bad day by any stretch, but for drivers that are typically found at the front of the field, that's pretty far back there.
Yeah, it is a surprise, certainly so, and well, it is worth noting.
Yeah, I was just gonna correct myself. There's 2 more drivers left to pit, so they actually are gonna cycle up a little bit higher up the order.
Quite possibly. So we'll see how that plays out. I do think it's interesting to note, though, that Pride appears to have got the jump back around Kondacioğlu. We saw him make that pass a little while ago, and so we'll have to see how that shakes out, and maybe we can figure out what happened to Michael, but he does seem to have dropped off by a considerable margin. It was 7.2 seconds at last check, which is quite interesting there. So, yeah, really, really curious to see how this goes. And I think the big winner out of all of this, if things should stay this way for the next 24 minutes, Sever in 5th as it runs with a couple of cars in the pit lane, 3rd in points coming in, might be able to take a big chunk, I should say, out of that points deficit and very much insert himself into the equation with the kind of run he's got going.
So 2 drivers left to pit at the top of the order. Also, when those 2 drivers pit, provided that Carl Whitmer is close enough, he'll put himself inside the top 10 after starting almost outside the top 20. There's Langevin in the number 69 just leaving the box, so he has completed his stop. And once the timing corrects itself, actually it looks like our 2nd place driver had also made their pit stop. So as we get the timing updated, we'll see where everybody shakes out. It should be Philippe Samar pretty safely out front over Ryan Meenan, Sievert in 3rd, or Langevin might end up shuffling. But here, okay, there's a look. As the timing finally updates, Langevin dropping down the order here. But with 23 minutes to go, Ryan, we've got our pit stops all completed. Everybody's down. Now it's just a sprint race to the end, the final 20 minutes. If you've got drivers around you, now's the time to pounce before that 23 minutes is up. Drivers have been patient for the most part so far making passes. I think that patience will start to run out for those that have been a little bit reserved with their passing.
Definitely. I'm curious what Kondacioğlu can do now. He's back at 9th behind Pride. He would desperately like to get back around Pride to try and extend the points lead, at least over his closest rival. This is the driver who I mentioned earlier might be in position to gain the most. It sounds like pit lane is where the difference was made. Something like 17 seconds difference between the amount of time spent on pit lane from this driver, Cody Pride, and our points leader, Kondacioğlu. So not entirely sure what would have caused that delay. Maybe Michael thought it's worth changing a tire or 2 tires or something. That's not required. All that's required in the pit stops is a liter of fuel. So there is the potential for a strategy call of that sort, or perhaps just a miscue of some kind. I really don't know the answer, and I'm left to speculate, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Cody Pride now battling for what would be 7th place, and I think if any cars that he can put between himself and Kondacioğlu, it's going to be a good thing for the point standings. Remember, they were separated by a handful of points, so if Pride can grab 1 or 2 spots before the end of the race, he could get those points that he needs to be the points leader leaving this event, provided nobody else jumps up into the mix. Of course, Sievert, who we talked about earlier, is lurking not too far behind as well, so there's going to be a pretty big point shakeup leaving round 3 here at Spa, and I think Cody Pride is trying to take advantage of it while he can.
Yeah, this is for position, by the way. This is for 7th, and there is a sizable difference, a noteworthy difference in points, a couple points between 7th and 8th in terms of what is allocated at the end. I think it's quite interesting. Pride, when he had Kondacioğlu behind, really wasn't making inroads on the cars ahead, but now that he has the gap, now that he doesn't have to drive defensively, that's allowed him to be the aggressor. He's been turning in some fast laps, and he's got his target acquired right up the windshield. Both drivers looking like they were on the edge of adhesion coming up that hill.
Yeah, they almost missed the bullseye on that target, climbing up the hill through Radillon while just clipping the edges of the board. Now on the run down to Lake Home. Speeds climbing well over 165 to 170 miles an hour here and using every bit of curbing that you can. The concrete curbing is fair game. Much beyond that, there's AstroTurf and concrete. That stuff is generally off limits once you're 4 tires off the curbing. So in the final 20 minutes, Ryan, it's very easy to open up that wheel just a little bit more, and you just want to get a little more racetrack. Very easy to pick yourself up a penalty running wide a couple of times. So make sure that you don't get driving through the red mist and you start missing your apexes and braking points, because it'll cost you if you get a penalty this late in the race.
Kyle, this is the first one of these we've been able to work together this year, and I have been waiting for the curb analysis from our king of the curb, Kyle Heyer.
Every racetrack we go to, there's always a topic of discussion about the curbs because they're different everywhere, and they're such an important part of the racetrack, Ryan.
I don't think anyone outside of the FIA knows more about curbs than Kyle Heyer. I learned something new every time.
Well, I try to, it's one of those things that I watch drivers, the ones that are down on the racetracks doing the track walks and analyzing, how they can jump those curbs, how they can hook the car around the curbs, and tracks that have the tall apex curbs versus the FIA style rumble strips. It's so interesting to watch different lines form based on the style of curbing that is alongside the racetrack, and those drivers that are very good and very technical will sort that out. And it's just fascinating to watch. But yeah, every track we go to, it's an analysis for sure.
Here is Simon Fisher once again. We were looking at that McLaren a moment ago, back on board with Taha Mali, who is having the best run of the season, I think it's safe to say, in this Lexus. Currently in 7th at DNF the last time out, finished 13th, so just out of the points. The first race at Kyalami, so well in the points right now, with the two championship protagonists directly behind, doing a great job of keeping that Porsche in arrears. This is a great shot from the rear diffuser coming up the hill. Wow, you can see the speed from this camera. You can see the car dancing around, the Porsche giving chase, and you better believe this Lexus is equally on the edge.
I love this shot too, looking up under the rear air device of the 731 Lexus, battling for 7th with Cody Pride. Cardin Lou is a little ways up the road, so I'm not sure that they're going to get there in time, but as they continue to battle, the stakes continue to rise. 18.5 minutes to go here in this race, and I think Cody Pride is just going to, I think he's going to use a little bit of discretion here because he is still ahead of Condoxio Glue, and I don't think he wants to sacrifice that to get one spot, but if he can pick it up without a whole lot of dramas, I'm sure he'd give it a go.
It's the tough balancing act, isn't it? And you just don't know what you're going to need at the end of the season. This pass right here, if he could make it, that could ultimately end up being the difference between a championship or coming up short. We'll have to see. Here's Alvarado again on the defensive, as he has been for so long, or is that a different Aston that we're looking at here? It is Alvarado trying to hold off Cloutier, I think.
It is. You're correct. Yep. That is the 89 that's behind him that we're looking at. That is one of the Lexus, I believe was one of the Lexuses trying to chase down the Aston, and indeed it is. The Lexus it was a car that Josh Staffen has used in the past before he switched over to the NSX. We've seen it a handful of times, and they sound real cool, Ryan. They're real cool looking. And Cloutier looking to try to grab a spot away from Alvarado. That's a battle for, looks like about, 15th place? 14th place?
Yes, that's right. Battle for 14th here between these two. And to your point about the Lexus, I also really love the look of it. It's got a nice sound as well. It's a shame that the European arm of this operation has gone away. It was a nice little feature in SRO racing. Here we go, side by side through Blanchimont. This is high pucker factor stuff.
Man, that is dicey. It's hard enough to go through there single file, let alone double wide through Blanchimont. But Alvarado defends very, very well. He's been defensively driving through his mirrors a lot, but Cloutier now through, and he'll grab that spot in the Lexus, move himself up to 14th spot as we move back to Cody Pride, chasing the 7th place car through Eau Rouge and up over the top already on 17 minutes to go, just under. And you can have a look on the bottom right of your screen, PPR Esports driver Cody Pride. You see the Nürburgring sign above his head in the background, another racetrack that has a lot of history for GT sports car racing and Porsche specifically, as Pride still works on trying to get a little closer to the top 5.
Well, no surprise that the Porsche is running well. Maybe a little bit surprised it's not a bit higher up. Porsche, by the way, has won the last 2 TotalEnergies 24 Hours of Spa in the real world. Won in dramatic fashion last year with a car that appeared ready to expire at any moment, and somehow Nick Tandy was able to nurse it home. This battle's not over yet. Here comes Alvarado. Oh, shame.
Man. Whoa, the 420 car is also sliding for a moment. That's going to bring in, I think, the 16th place car right behind him. So with that touch, it's going to also hurt Alvarado. There's a handful of other drivers behind. Canapan back there as well in the Lamborghini that wants a piece of this, but that's going to be a tough situation. To, I wish we could, hopefully we can get another look at that, but that was a very sketchy moment. Warning to car 412 for aggressive driving for an incident on lap number 17. Ryan, 15 minutes to go. People still getting looked at for contact.
Yes, sure, and I think the stewards will stay busy for the final 15 minutes. Like you said, the patience starts to wear out the closer to the end you go. I don't usually try and get in the steward's shoes too much, but I think this one's pretty straightforward. I think, unfortunately, that looked like avoidable contact to me, and A pretty strong run and some really stout defense from Alvarado early in this race is going to come up for naught. I think he's probably going to see an extra trip down the pit lane after that one, or if not that, some time penalty added on at least.
Yeah, that's the challenge, right? Is within the last 15 minutes, you start to get that red mist. You start to try to force passes, and it's just not, worth it at times when you don't know you can make it. You make a low percentage move that you think you might be able to make, but if you can't make it, it will cost you. Have a look at Sievert here for fourth. Is he closing up? Yes, he is on third place. Langevin in the number 69 Bentley. Or actually, yes, it is a Bentley just up the road. So we could have a battle for the last spot on the podium here in the last 15 minutes.
Definitely so. And again, huge implications here. This is massive for this driver right here in the number 81 car. Third in points coming in and quite a ways back. And with the two top drivers in the championship struggling just to score a couple of points, there's not many on offer once you get down outside of the podium positions. This could be a huge day for Chris if he's able to finish where he is or even get up another spot. 15 points is what you get for finishing third. That's the deficit. That's how much he's trailing Kadacioglu right now. So that would put him right there in the mix. It would probably, if my math I'm trying to do on the fly is right, put him ahead of second place Pride and put him up into second going into the next round of the season. So he really just needs a clean run if he can get it. Let's take another look at this and see. What do you think here, Kyle? I gave my judgment already.
Yeah, see, on the run down to Lake Home, a lot of moving around, but the Lexus did nothing wrong there. Just got punted from behind. Yes, that's pretty straightforward to me, Ryan. Unfortunately, that's how racing goes sometimes, and now you see the drive-through for Alvarado on the timing screen, a penalty for avoidable contact. But going back to Sievert, the other reason this position is significant is he's inside the top 5. That's locked in for the next round as well, so he will not have to re-qualify in, provided he stays here, or at least inside the top 5. And that would put him, even closer as a championship favorite, given that Kadacioglu and Pride would have to qualify their way back in.
Well, Pride certainly would, as far as I understand the rules. Kadacioglu, I don't think would, again, as the reigning champion. He gets that automatic entry, so that is some solace for Michael. But I'll be honest, maybe this just isn't been the best track for the McLaren. I mean, we don't see any outside of or ahead of Kadacioglu, so maybe that says that this just isn't quite the best course for that horse, so to speak. But I did expect a bit more fireworks from him coming up through the field, especially when he set the fastest middle sector time in qualifying of anybody, going back to just before this race got started.
Well, look at this battle again here with Alvarado now defending with that drive-through. Mador behind in the Lexus, Canapan in the blue Lamborghini, and just behind, I think that's a lap-down Audi, but still here, they're side by side again. And I think the Aston, I thought he was going to go hit pit lane, but did not come. As we go back up to third place, battle between Sievert and Langevin, and I think Sievert had a look into Lake Como, was not able to complete that pass.
Yeah, really nice between those two. Great deal of respect shown. This is a tough situation here because you know that the car you're chasing, if you're in the chasing car in that Lexus, is going to have to serve a drive-through penalty. You'd love to just kind of wait it out and let him get out of your way without having to force the issue. But look at the pressure behind. Can't do that. No time to be patient right now. Let's see. This might be the chance to make that run.
Here we go. Slipstream on the back straight here on the Kemmel straightaway. Now the Lexus looks left. Going to be a drag race to Lake Home. Lexus versus Aston Martin, both V8 power plants under the hoods, both front-engine cars. The mid-engine Lamborghini behind him almost gets tagged from the lap-down Audi. That's Canapan behind, watching as the two drivers in front scrap back and forth. Alvarado still defending. Mador, his patience level has got to be getting low here, knowing that Alvarado's got to drive through and is just holding him up at this point. Now that's got to be a mild annoyance, but it's still racing, Ryan.
Yeah, that's how it goes. And again, Alvarado's got every right to fight because he's trying to position himself as best as possible following this drive-through. That said, this late in the race, outside of the points, not sure that I would be quite so sanguine on battling this hard when you're going to have to serve a penalty anyway. But, there's nothing that says he's got to give this position up. He just has to come to the pit lane to serve this penalty here before too much longer.
Only about 10 minutes left. That's only really about 4 to 5 laps worth of racing, depending on where the race leaders are. So you're only going to get 4 or 5 more shots at all the passing zones that we talked about earlier, La Source, Lake Home, and the chicane towards the end of the lap. There's only a few more opportunities to make your passes. So Modor is probably feeling that pressure, especially with Canapan sizing him up from behind and bringing other cars in the mix. Gonzalez in the Ferrari is not too far back. Here we go, now side by side of the run down to Blanchimont. Ryan, this is dicey.
Yeah, like I said earlier, this is really not where you want to be side by side if you can help it. And yeah, they do back out of it. That was smart, but that brings the Lamborghini into the fold. We've got a whole host of company here. This is going to get interesting into the bus stop. We'll see if the Aston peels off to serve the penalty. No! Oh, and around goes the Lexus, and a lot of collateral damage. Yeah, yikes.
That's 3 or 4 cars all turned around at the final corner there, and that was just messy. Canapan, I think, had a pretty big gain there. He just outbraked everybody on the outside when they were all getting kind of plugged up in the cork there, but then when the Lexus turned around, chaos ensued behind. I think Canapan will pick up a couple spots there. Here's a battle again for third. Sievert trying to run that Bentley back down. He almost had it complete a couple laps ago, but now has fallen in behind Langevin in the Bentley, and now has 9 minutes left to run him down and try to pass him again.
Makes me wonder if perhaps Langevin had a little slip up coming up the hill, possibly up onto the Kimmel Straight, and that gave Sievert the chance to get that run, because since then it looks like he's been inch perfect, has not opened up the door. No possibility has emerged to be able to try and take that spot away. So again, this is another one where how aggressive do you want to be, Kyle, in this situation? Getting another position rather, that's multiple points difference between 4th and 3rd. It's a pretty big payday gap. I think something like 2 or 3 points different. So there's plenty of incentive to go for it, but on the other hand, it could all go awry so quickly, and this is already shaping up to be an excellent points day, plus already locked in the field for next month too. So I think perhaps there's more of an inclination to be a bit conservative here, but we'll see how it plays out.
Well, the point structure in itself provides a lot of motivation to get these passes done. If you think about a point system like NASCAR, where it's 1 point per position, there's not a ton of reason to make a pass from 3rd to 2nd. It doesn't really gain you a lot. But here with the point system we have, there's a significant points jump per position up inside the top 5. So you really want to get those passes done if you can, because it will pay off and your efforts will be worth something at the end of this race. So 7.5 minutes left for Sievert to get one more position, but Langevin trying to hang on for a podium. Out front, though, Philippe Samard and Killian Ryan Meenan have just been absolutely running away. Different zip codes for those two so far today.
Well, I should bring up that Samard is due to have a nice points day here as well. 25 points to the winner, so he's got 14 coming in. That brings him up to 39 should he hold on, and that puts you right there amongst this group that we've been talking about. Probably shouldn't have let that slip by. And then it's 18 points for second, and Killian Ryan Meenan comes in with 1. So it certainly helps him break free and into the mid-pack a little bit, separate himself from some of the others that have been consistently finishing in the back half of the top 10. But you're looking at a couple of guys who can have a really good day today if things hold the way that they are.
Just under 7 minutes left here in the third round of the 2021 GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Still watching the battle for third between Langevin in the Bentley and Sievert in the Aston Martin. It's only about 5 car lengths between them. Here's another battle. Bruno in the Porsche, that's the 909, trying to chase down the 22nd place car. Battles all throughout the field. We mentioned we had just shy of 40 cars start this race, Ryan. A lot of our focus has been inside the top 20. That does not mean there haven't been other really good battles outside of the top 20 as well. And speaking of cars outside of the top 20, after Alvarado's penalty, he has dropped all the way down to 26th. And so his day has gone from bad to worse.
Yeah, that's disappointing for sure. And I was so impressed with how strong he was in defense early in the race. It was a mistake. I don't think there was anything malicious there in the contact with the Lexus. These things happen in racing. It is unfortunate because not only does it affect his day, which wasn't going great. I mean, he was outside of the points, but it had been solid. But there was also a victim in that circumstance too. So you hate to see it, no question about it, but we'll bounce back stronger, I'm sure, coming into the next round.
So just about 5 minutes left. What's that, Ryan? 2, maybe 3 laps left for the front runners at a 2:20-ish lap time. And Philippe Simard out front has been absolutely dominating this race. And thinking back to all the bad luck that he had in seasons past, it must be a really nice change for him to just go out front and lead and not have to really deal with a whole lot of dramas or carnage. I think back to where he was having a really solid run at Mount Panorama Circuit last season, and he had a crash coming down the mountain, so that was a frustrating day for him. Here's another penalty from race control. Incident on lap 21 involving car number 40 and car number 111. That was deemed a racing incident. No action for the 2 cars involved in that collision.
Yeah, you bring up a good point about Simard, and I'm hesitant to say too much because, like you said, we've had some bad luck for Philippe over the course of the last season and a half, I guess, of this championship, and I don't want to bring any hex upon him or anything like that. So I will qualify everything I say with as it runs, and so far things are looking very promising, and it has been that kind of quiet yet dominant day that we've really known he's capable of. The pace has never been in question. He's been incredibly fast, qualifying laps that really blow you away, and this is a car driver track combination we figured would be very, very strong. It's been nice to see that he's been able to convert that pace into what appears to be headed for a very solid result, the best possible result, in fact.
Here is a battle for 17th place. Cloutier in the number 9, or the number 39 rather. That's the Lexus just up the road. Matheson the number 6, the green and black Porsche chasing down P17. Simon Fisher, who we talked about briefly at the beginning, is currently scored in 20th, a couple seconds back from this. A very tight battle from basically 15th on back. So lots of positions still shuffling at the tail end of this race. About 2 laps to go for the race leaders. Still out front, it's Philippe Simard, but all throughout the racetrack, all the 5.7 kilometers of Spa covered in GT race cars here in the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship, and battles from inside the top 5 all the way to 35th and beyond.
Well, a couple of notes here. Knappen, who was in that blue Lamborghini we saw part of the coming together in the bus stop a few laps back, appears like there's a drive-through penalty there. Apologies if you've already mentioned that. I should also point out that Michael Kondacioğlu, who was some 7 seconds behind Cody Pride at one point following the lengthy pit stop, has carved into that deficit. It's down to 3 seconds. Now only 3 minutes left, and it does look like some traffic in between the two, so it's probably too much to ask for to try and actually catch up, but he's doing enough to keep himself in the back of Cody's mind. He can't quite forget about Kondacioğlu, who is threatening there, running the third car in line as we saw the Porsche come through, then the lapped car, and then Michael in that McLaren.
Yeah, penalty for Knappen in the number...
Change of position here, Kyle, I think. We've seen Sievert make that spot up and now sits third.
He's gotten that position away. I think it was probably in Lake Como where he made that pass at the end of the Kemmel Straight. Nice catch there, Ryan. So Langevin back to 4th in the Bentley. Sievert up to 3rd, but before he got fully alongside, wasn't able to hang on to it. Now he's going to try to defend from Langevin in the closing moments here. Penalty to car 127 for avoidable contact with the number 246 car. So thanks to race control for that update. But can Sievert hang on to 3rd here, Ryan? He's got to have 1 minute and 57 seconds plus the remainder of whatever the white flag lap is to do it, and we know Langevin is certainly not out of it just yet.
No, certainly not. That's a strong package right behind that Bentley, very stout in a straight line, similar in a lot of respects to the BMW that we've been talking so much about. I'm not quite sure it's got the same straight line speed that the BMW has, but it is a strong car in that capacity. But Sievert has got that job done for the moment, and if he can make it through this next sequence, I think he'll be able to build up enough of a gap that he should be able to consolidate that position. Looking pretty strong here through the bus stop. Can he get the run out? Well, credit to the Bentley. It's hanging tough right there. We're going to see a similar situation in this upcoming corner, the Wassource hairpin. But important note on the points as they run. This would bring Sievert's points total up to 43, and I think that would put him just a handful behind Kondacioğlu leaving this race, and I believe that should put him up in 2nd place in the points. So a really, really strong run here in the 3rd spot, and crucial to get that spot, and Langevin goes wide there at the top of Raidillon.
And he's crashed.
Yes.
Wow, that's brutal for Langevin, battling Sievert in the closing moments and a crash at the top of Radion. Here comes Josh Staffen around the outside. He's going to grab fourth place away. And with 30 seconds left, where is Philippe Simard here, Ryan? That's my next question is he going to get the checkers? I haven't gotten the notification that it is the white flag lap yet, but he is rolling through the backside of the racetrack. So I think we've got another lap left to go here, Ryan, or it's going to, this is white flag. So we are coming back to the checkers with Simard leading, Killian Ryan Meenen second, Sievert third, Staffen fourth.
That is interesting news for sure. I think Langevin's going to be happy to hear about that because he's still holding on to the last position that will automatically put him in the field for next month's race. That was Hendrickson, fifth in points coming in. He's had a really trying day, and he's warped back to the pits effectively after some heavy damage there in his Mercedes. Had been up in 13th, but that is not where he will finish, which is a real shame.
So Philippe Simard rolling through the last couple corners here at Spa-Francorchamps. Ryan, I've got another green flag coming up in the real world here in just about 2 minutes. So as soon as the checkered falls for the leaders, I'm going to dip out and leave you to take care of the post-race for me. But Simard through Blanchimont for the final time, throwing up marbles at the exit of Blanchimont, through the chicane, and Philippe Simard, this was a perfect race. Started on pole, led every single lap, and will come through the last corner and pick up his first checkered flag of the season. Philippe Simard wins round 3 of the 2021 GT World Challenge America Esports Championship from Spa.
Well, it's been a long time coming. Philippe Simard, a flawless run today, put the field on notice when he put down that qualifying lap that was nearly a half a second clear of second place Killian Ryan Meenen, who himself had a near flawless day. Not enough to challenge Simard, but comes home a very strong second. Then Sievert, great day as we've chronicled. Staffen, nice run to fourth. And then the Bentley of Langevin, nice recovery after the spin just a few moments ago.
Ryan, a fantastic race. Simard taking the victory. I'm going to head out now, so give my best wishes to Philippe, and thanks everybody for watching. There's still post-race coming your way with Ryan Reed. Thanks everybody for watching.
Well, happy to pitch in here, Kyle. Best of luck to you, my friend. And let's take a look at the way that this wraps up here. Pride, with some issues late in the race, has dropped outside of the top 10. That has championship implications there. No points for him. He was in position to finish ahead of Kadacioglu, who is elevated to 8th. So this is really, really interesting, and I wonder what might have caused that. Did he not put enough fuel in the car, perhaps expecting a certain number of laps? We're hearing perhaps some contact might have been the issue there. So costly stuff for Cody Pride, who entered this weekend second in points. He will not leave second in points. In fact, scores none in the third race of the championship. Here's Michael Fritz, who's been in the wars here today in this brightly colored Bentley. Tough day for this driver. Had some good pace early on, but was right there in the middle of some really stiff competition that ultimately dropped him down the order. Some misfortune struck. Looks like just trying to consolidate a finish here in the third round of the season. Fritz across the line for the final time. Now have, I think, wrapped up everybody who was on track. What a race it was. Congratulations to Philippe Simard, a long time coming, as we talked about. A really stout competitor going back to Season 2. Did have some success in endurance racing. We did a long distance race at Spa in the rain last year as part of Season 2, a non-points special event effectively. And he had was part of the winning driver lineup in that, if memory serves. But as far as sprint racing goes, he's not had that breakthrough win as of yet, but that changes here today at Spa, and I look forward to speaking with Philippe to get his impressions of putting that kind of run together after challenging so consistently over the course of the last several races, the last season and a half effectively. Great to see him finally be able to put it all together there. And Killian Ryan Meenen, I mentioned earlier, had a run into the points in the first round of the championship, scored 1 point with a 10th place finish, but did not participate last month. So this is good for him. to be up in a position to score a bunch of points with that nice run to second place. And I think he'll be quite pleased with that run because no one had anything for our race winner here today. Philippe Simard, congratulations on your strong run and your victory. You've been waiting for a while. You've had good pace going back to last season and so far this year too. But finally, that sprint race win. Did you feel confident that you could get it done when you put the car on pole by nearly a half a second?
Yeah, thanks for mentioning. I've been doing too many SRO races without win.
Sorry about that.
No, it was a good one. I saw. I'm not gonna lie. I got a bit of help from BOP. The BMW is a strong car. It's not the best car, but it's in this pack of strong cars. It didn't get the slowdown that the other good cars got here. So I kind of knew coming into the week that I could walk away with this one quite easily.
Well, that said, yes, maybe the BOP was favorable, but on the other side, you still have to get it done. You still have to drive the laps. You have to manage the traffic. Were there any scary moments, or did you feel firmly in control from the start of this race?
No, the only thing I was watching early on is Chris, who I knew was on a full fuel strategy, so he would gain quite a bit of time in the pits. I went with around half fuel tank to try to get away from the pack, not have to fight, just to hard lap on my own at the front. So I was watching the gap to Chris early on, but I saw after 3 or 4 laps already that I would manage to get a gap good enough to just never be under any threat at all.
With the win, we continue our streak of no repeat winners as of yet. Going back season 2, we had different winners in each race. It's been the case so far here in season 3 thus far, with 3 different winners through the first 3 races. Do you feel like you're in the championship hunt at this point? Was this the result you needed to really put on a challenge for the title?
And not only I needed a good result, but I needed Michael to have a bad one. I think he got one here. So I think I'm back in the hunt. Hungaroring is going to be difficult. I'm not sure if the BMW can be at the front. It can be near, but we'll see. And then Suzuka, I think, will be strong there. So yeah, I think I'm back in the hunt for the championship with that race.
How soon do you start your preparations for the Hungaroring?
No, I usually wait a week before the race. I see when the hot laps go on, I see what kind of lap times people are getting, and I get into it at that time.
Well, Philippe, congratulations. A perfect race today, at least from our vantage point. Long awaited and certainly overdue. We're so happy to see you break through with that victory. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Philippe Simard, race winner at Spa-Francorchamps. What a great race it was. Great fights up and down this field. But Philippe really had it handled from the drop of the green. Started on pole by nearly half a second. Got a good opening lap and never looked back from there. Totally dominating this race. As we take a look at some of the highlights, this is the driver I think who's got to be wondering what might have been. This had a chance to help at least reverse the championship to some extent, as Cody Pride ran ahead in this Porsche of points leader Michael Kondacioğlu for a good part of the race. The vast majority of it was able to leapfrog back around through the pit stop sequence after losing a spot to Michael at one stage in the opening stint. But unfortunately, contact, it appears, in the final lap of the race dropped him out of the points and also elevated Kondacioğlu to another spot. Here was some really stiff competition between a couple of different cars, and here is Cody Pride. Not contact with another car, simply an error coming through Ranion, hard into the barrier, and drops him down the order. That answers that question. It goes to show just how hard everyone is pushing, even towards the end of these races. Well, thanks so much for joining us for the 3rd round of the championship. We head next to the Hungaroring. As you heard, the 14th of August, the next round in the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship. Hope you join us for that. And keep your eyes on the GT World YouTube channel as well. A huge race in the real world coming up the SRO's Blue Ribbon event. It is the TotalEnergies 24 Hours of Spa coming up next week with live coverage on this same YouTube channel. We hope you join us for that. For everyone behind the scenes and Kyle Heyer, my name is Ryan. Thanks so much for tuning in. Talk to you next time with the next round of the GT World Challenge America Esports Championship at the Hungaroring, August 14th.